crews return underground in search of missing miners as the president calls for increased safety in mines. The World Bank approves money for an enormous new coal-fired power plant in South Africa, why the U.S. is under fire for sitting out the vote. And climate negotiators gather in Bonn to chart the course for a world climate treaty in Mexico.
From the Energy News Center in Washington, D.C., this is the Energy Report with Susan McGinnis.
Good afternoon, I'm Susan McGinnis. Thanks for joining us for the Energy Report. Well, despite setbacks in rescue efforts, crews are returning underground to search for the remaining 4 miners at the Upper Big Branch mine. Rescuers have been turned around due to signs of fire and a high concentration of gases. Kevin Strickland of MSHA said today they would return underground in an effort to reach the last of 3 refuge chambers, which is considered to be the miners' last chance of survival. Strickland had hoped to be able to use a camera to see if the chamber was used, but officials said they would not be able to see anything. Meanwhile, President Obama offered his condolences to those who lost family members and friends in the blast. He said the government has an obligation to ensure the safety of the miners.
When I was in the Senate, I supported the efforts of Senator Byrd and Rockefeller to try to improve mine safety, but it's clear that more needs to be done. And that's why I've asked my Secretary of Labor, as well as the head of Mine Safety and Health Administration, to give me a preliminary report next week on what went wrong and why it went wrong so badly, so that we can take the steps necessary to prevent such accidents in the future.
The World Bank has now approved a nearly $4 billion loan to help South Africa build an enormous new coal-fired power plant. But the U.S., the bank's leading shareholder, abstained from the approval decision amid worries about carbon emissions. The proposed Medupi power plant would be a 4,800-megawatt supercritical facility a few hours' drive north of Johannesburg. State utility Eskom is building the plant close to the coal mines that will provide supply, but apparently financing would have run dry without this World Bank loan. Well, today, Clean Skies talked with former World Bank lead economist Maureen Cropper about the bank's decision-making process and the U.S. decision to abstain from the vote.
I think the tension here is between a country that is really trying itself, the U.S., to implement a climate change policy and really believes that when it comes to a project like this, which will have a significant impact, at least within South Africa, on carbon emissions, that it's really not appropriate to approve this.
Well, Cropper also discussed the World Bank's energy lending history and the money it's put into the coal sector over the last few years. Tyler Suter's entire interview with Maureen Cropper is right here at cleanskies.com. Well, the issues that derailed the Copenhagen Climate Conference quickly reemerged as climate negotiators convened in Bonn, Germany today. Delegates from 175 countries are trying to map out a path toward a hoped-for global warming treaty at the next major conference in Mexico. The meeting ran into immediate contention over how to treat the Copenhagen Accord, the only outcome of Copenhagen. 120 states have affiliated with that agreement, but the African bloc claimed that the accord was written by a select few, and any further attempt to bypass the majority will obstruct the process. The delegate from Yemen, speaking for 135 developing nations, said negotiations must return to the 2 formal UN negotiating tracks. Those tracks have been struggling for 2 years with little success, and it was the prospect of their failure that prompted world leaders to frame the accord. The Bonn talks continued over the weekend. The Energy Department is making a major push to train Americans to work on the smart grid. Secretary Stephen Chu says the department will spend $100 million in Recovery Act funds on smart grid workforce training grants. Chu made the announcement while touring a utility service center in Maryland where power lines are built and maintained. The center, owned by Pepco, will get $4.4 million to train 700 new and existing employees. Smart grid technology uses intelligent grid sensors and two-way communications to reliably deliver power and help customers save energy by making informed decisions about their power use. The secretary told the audience the money will help usher in the next generation of high-tech workers at 54 training centers around the country.
These funds will develop new training programs, enhance existing programs, and train approximately 30,000 people that will support electricians, line workers, technicians, system operators, power system engineers, cybersecurity specialists, and transmission planners. This is training a workforce for tomorrow. These funds will come on with more than $95 million from community colleges, universities, utilities, and manufacturers.
Many of the utilities getting the money plan to share their new knowledge and training methods with colleges, universities, and energy industry associations. Secretary Chu is also vowing to get the auto industry on the fast track to build more fuel-efficient vehicles. He told reporters on a conference call the department is working as fast as it can to provide additional loans for automakers, parts suppliers, and startups to retool factories, and he hopes to make announcements on loans soon. The Energy Department has awarded fewer than $9 billion from a low-cost government loan fund to 4 automakers and 1 supplier, and hasn't approved a new loan in 5 months. Ford, Nissan, Tesla, and Fisker have received money so far, but the Detroit News says most of the 100 automakers, suppliers, and startups seeking the rest of the $16 billion have been rejected, given up, or are still waiting. Those companies include GM and Chrysler. Big Brown is adding more green. UPS is adding 200 new next-generation hybrid electric delivery trucks to its fleet. UPS says the HEVs will save 176,000 gallons of fuel each year and 1,800 metric tons of carbon dioxide. The trucks use a diesel engine that recharges the battery pack or adds power to the engine when needed. They are set to hit the streets of Austin, Houston, Philadelphia, Chicago, D.C., Long Island, Minneapolis, and Louisville. Oil prices have enjoyed 2 weeks of gains on signs of a rebounding economy. Elliot Gue of the Energy Strategist says he expects oil to reach $90 a barrel this month and wouldn't be surprised to see $100 oil this year. Asking him where this leaves investment opportunities, Gue pointed out many projects in the Middle East that were stalled because of the financial crisis are being restarted. U.S. companies involved in those projects, he says, are a place to look. But he says you may want to look to oil services firms and avoid the big oil giants.
The services companies are more leveraged to oil upside than a lot of people want to buy a big company like ExxonMobil or Chevron. Those companies actually tend to underperform in a rising oil price environment. They're seen as more defensive names. They have a lot of refining exposure. Instead, look at a company like a Schlumberger or a Weatherford. These are the companies that are going to benefit most. In fact, both those companies just got a contract on the Rumaila oil field in Iraq from BP, probably about a $500 million contract.
On the natural gas side, Gue says to look to U.S. producers with solid positions in shale and services companies with ties to U.S. natural gas. He recommends Baker Hughes, which just bought BJ Services, and Neighbors. That's a driller which has a lot of horizontal rigs used for unconventional gas production. Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez claims his country may have the world's largest offshore natural gas field. Bloomberg says Chavez told state television the field is being developed by Petróleos de Venezuela along with Repsol and Eni. He said that it could hold 14 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. This, as Chavez also extended his country's electricity emergency for another 60 days. The government has put into place energy-saving measures since December, but Chavez is asking residents to continue to conserve. Here's a look at some goings-on around the Beltway on Monday. 10 a.m. former General Wesley Clark and Growth Energy's Tom Buis and Jim Nussel hold a news conference at the Museum on a national initiative by ethanol supporters. At noon, Swiss President Doris Luther and others are at the Library of Congress to talk about the potential of clean energy to rejuvenate the economy and create jobs. And at 12:30, SAIS graduate students who attended the China and Energy course trip will talk about their findings. Clean Skies News will have more from that. That is the Energy Report. We'll see you again Monday with your latest energy news. And for any suggestions or comments about our programming on Clean Skies News, you can email us at contact@cleanskies.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. From all of us here in the Energy News Center, have a great weekend.